On behalf of the House Democratic Caucus, I want to thank you all for being here for our weekly press conference. We've got a couple of issues that we want to talk about. We want to briefly touch on tax cuts, touch on Cultural Center and capital funding issues, capital repair issues, and also Representative Shelton is here in a moment to kind of touch on his one of his big agenda items this year, as well as ours, is sort of the Reading Sufficiency Act and some of the problems that our school children and our teachers are facing right now. I will say this, the House Democratic Caucus is encouraged that that the Republican majority looks like they're taking seriously the need to finish the Cultural Center project, as well as to actually get in and repair the state capitol. They're long overdue projects. We're waiting to see how responsive the House Republicans are to what the Senate Republicans have put forward. We've yet to get any inclination from the Speaker or any of his leadership team that they absolutely support using the unclaimed property fund to finish the Cultural Center or the bond proposal for the state capitol. But at least we're moving forward with the conversation, and I think the people of Oklahoma should be grateful for that. Unfortunately, the conversation that continues to move forward as well is that of tax cuts. The governor continues to push her irresponsible tax cut plan in spite of numbers that got worse for her this week. Not just for her, but for all of the state of Oklahoma, for our school children, our state employees, those folks who want to drive on good roads and bridges. We're now looking at $188 million worth of cuts to our core functions of government, many of whom have already taken over a 20% cut. For the governor to look at those people, to look at the teachers and the children and the parents of those children in the eye and say, I'm sorry, but we're going to go ahead and issue another round of what will essentially be a per pupil cut to many of our schools. I'm sorry we can't increase funding for career tech. We can't increase funding for higher ed. Matter of fact, we're going to cut higher ed by $47 million. For her to look them in the eye and say we can't do this, but we can afford a $136 million tax cut is just it's mind-boggling. It's very frustrating. And we think that the people of Oklahoma, Democrat, Republican, Independent, immaterial of partisan affiliation, we believe they just simply are not with the governor on this issue. They know that they've seen class sizes grow. They've seen major holes open up on I-40 in Del City on the I-40 bridge over 15th Street. They've seen those kinds of things, and they go, why can't we fix them? And oftentimes the response from the governor and Republican leadership is, well, we just don't have the money to do it. Well, if we don't have the money to do it, why are we cutting taxes to the tune of $136 million, which will only help a very, very small few folks in the state of Oklahoma? And for those who really do see any benefit at all, it's very, very marginal. And so we believe that those people, our constituents, want us to reinvest those resources into the core functions of government. And you'll hear the House Democratic Caucus continue to beat that drum as we move forward. And finally, the other issue that I'll talk about before I turn it over to Representative Shelton and his comments on the RSA before we open up to questions is we are still, in the House Democratic Caucus, frustrated by some of the vitriol and the anger that has been coming out of several members of the House Republican Caucus at teachers and parents and students in our public school system. For Representative Turner and Roberts and Murphy to come out and wag their finger and tell public school children and the teachers who educate them that they have no right to come from Tulsa or anywhere else to come down to the Capitol to let their opinion be known as to what their legislative leadership has done to their classrooms and their schools is reprehensible. They work for the people of Oklahoma just like we do, and they have every right to come to this building. Matter of fact, if you listen to the rhetoric that Representative Murphy and Turner offer up, it sounds to me like they're telling the people, our teachers and our parents and our students, don't come down while you're still in school, come down at another time. Well, when, Representative Murphy and Turner, would you suggest that teachers and students come down? August, when they're out of school? June, when they're out of school? July, when they're out of school? Well, guess what? We're out of session at that point, too. So apparently they want them to come down and rally at the building when there's no one here to listen. We're in session from February to May. We're here, and the budget that's being offered up by folks like Representative Turner and Representative Murphy is bad for public education, and there's no better time for the teachers and the public school children of this state to come down and let their voice be heard. And so we stand with those folks in Tulsa. We stand with those folks around the state who say, you know what, we need to come down here and let our voice be heard, and you will hear us push back against what we believe is irresponsible rhetoric from the members of the House Republican Caucus.
It has come to my attention that the House Representatives and the Senate don't plan to do much with passing bills regarding the Reading Sufficiency Act. There have been a number of bills that have been filed this session to postpone, to delay, to do a multitude of changes to the current law to protect our children. And I heard from the education chair today that none of those bills will be heard. The only thing that they're going to be heard is a different way for children to, for the parents to appeal their third grade child moving on to fourth grade. Representative Vindman has laid out a wonderful he's laid out everything you need to know about the budget, and we've cut services, we've cut education, almost $220 million, about to see another cut, and we are desperate to find some answers to this Reading Sufficiency Act. Children with dyslexia and other learning disabilities we are looking at almost 50% of those children in the state of Oklahoma being held back. We can do better than that. Nobody's saying we shouldn't be passing laws to help our children read. We should, but to pass laws and not put the resources in for our teachers is irresponsible, and those people that are continuing to do it, they're absent from reality. They're absent from reality. And the parents are starting to get desperate. They're starting to come up here trying to find help for their child. They're trying to find help for their child, and I'm here to tell you, if this legislature does not come up with some type of plan in the very near future, in the next month, a clear articulating plan, parents are going to be forced to pull their third graders out of school, teach them themselves, and move them and keep them out of school till they get to the fourth grade so that they don't get held back, because the legislature did not do our part by funding the resources our teachers need to teach these children.
So Democratic caucus on the capital repairs, you're on board with that?
Well, I mean, we do not have an official position yet as to whether or not the entire caucus supports the $160 million bond proposal. We certainly support completing the project, and we are in discussions now with our leadership team as to whether or not we want to come out and full-throatedly support the bond proposal, or whether we want to maybe offer up an alternative, maybe using rainy day money or some other options that are there that exist to funding to completing the project. But we are uniformly supportive of getting the repairs done. We have to get them done. It's gone on far too long. And we're anxious to see what kind of support the House Republicans have, because what we don't want to see is, there are 29 of us, so that takes 22 House Republicans to pass anything if all 29 of us stay on one issue. What we don't want to see is 50 House Republicans all vote no and go back home and tell the state that we're bad for passing a bond proposal, when they know full well that the governor and the other Republicans in the Senate want it done, and then put it back on our lap to say, you carry the water, so that we can beat you up in the next election cycle for passing a bond proposal. That's not palatable to our team. These Republicans have been tasked to lead the state, and we're asking them to do it, and we just want to see how much support that they have in the House Republican caucus for that bill.
Representative Vindman, I've asked other lawmakers this, and I'll ask you or Representative Shelton, either one. When you guys go back to your district and you talk to people, do they hit you with they want to see an increase in the income tax? Do you hear that? Is that a subject that people talk to you about, that they're concerned about? And if it's not, what is the big subject that residents of your districts are saying?
Sure, and we all represent different constituencies and different socioeconomic backgrounds and all of that, obviously. But no, in Del City and South Oklahoma City, I've not had anybody come up and say, please, please, please cut the income tax. It doesn't happen. I had somebody at my church a few years ago come up to me, and who doesn't live in my district, but come up to me and say, when there was discussion about going to zero on the income tax, and he came to me and said, that kind of sounds like a neat idea. He goes, that's pretty good. What are your thoughts, Scott? And I explained to him my thoughts and talked about Texas's property tax and Kansas's artificially inflated sales tax increases and things like that. And he went, oh, that's not a very good idea then. And so and then talked to him about the significant budget cuts that had been taking place throughout the state for education and healthcare and public safety and transportation. And so he backed off of it. He was the only person in my district in the last several years that's even approached me to even discuss in any supportive way a kind of a tax cut, and it wasn't very long until he was off that issue. So no, the issue that we get the most in our districts are things like we need to fix DHS, we need to improve funding for education, healthcare is a big problem, and those are probably the three biggest things. That and roads and bridges. When I've got a big hole in I-40 over my district, that didn't sit well with my constituents very well. But that's the conversation. That's where it comes from. That's what we discuss when we go back home. And finding a way. When I sit down with the Chamber of Commerce, and we did that just a few weeks ago with the legislative forum, a lot of the business leaders were saying, well, how do we find a way to get more people through career tech, or get more people through higher education, so that we need some people, we need some able-bodied, well-educated folks for our jobs. And then I told them, well, the governor's plan offers up 0 increases for career tech, even though her director of Career Tech, who's also a Secretary of Education, has got a plan that he's taken around the building saying we need $34 million new for this incredible business career tech, innovative idea to work together. And I say, I'm certainly with you, sir, Dr. Summers, but where's the governor on paying for it? Well, she's not going to give us any new money. Well, then why are you here asking me to give you $34 million? Of course I support it, and the business community supports it. How come we're not having any? Why isn't there no new money? Well, there's just not. Well, then why is the governor supporting a tax cut? You sit on her cabinet. Why is she supporting a tax cut? And he says, well, that's something you have to take up with the governor, and he was wise to do that. But no, the people back home are not asking for tax cuts. They're just not. Matter of fact, I've had conversations, candid conversations with my fellow Republican colleagues, and they've all asked me, said, Scott, I don't understand it. Nobody back home in my district is asking for a tax cut. Why are we pushing it when we're cutting budgets at the same time? And I say, sir, ma'am, that's not a question for me to ask. I've asked it. Nobody will answer it for me downstairs. Please, you go ask the leader of your party in the state, the Republican governor, why she's pushing such an irresponsible plan. Any other questions? Pat, you look like
You're sure you're okay with tax money being used, like for buses or whatever, to bring people to the Capitol for a rally? I just want to double check.
No, I believe that what they're doing now is they're taking time off, right? And they're going to the buses will be paid for through private dollars, so they're not using tax dollars to bring them down. They're not going to do that. So, yeah, and I think that's prudent, and they can certainly do it. And they've said that's what Tulsa's going to do, and other folks are going to use private dollars to pay for the buses and the gasoline to bring them down here, and I think that's certainly responsible. And and make no mistake about it too. They talk about students missing class time, and they talk about using tax dollars, and they've railed against both, right? Well, we had homeschooler day up here, which I'm a big supporter of. I have family members who homeschool their children, and so I'm very supportive of that concept. And for them to come out on a day that normally they probably would be educating their children, right? But they come out here to advocate for their issues. I think that's certainly fine. They should have that opportunity to do that, and we applaud them for doing it. My members don't look at them and say, you shouldn't be here, right? You should be back home educating your kids. Well, that's essentially what Turner and Murphy are saying is, no, you need to go back up to Tulsa and have another school day. Well, they're going to have the same number of school days, and they're just using this rhetoric to kind of, I think, divert from the true point. And the point is they continue to cut public funding for education, and the people who are on the front lines and who feel it the most, they're telling them, please don't come down here and make a loud noise about it, because that could be politically painful for us.
No caucus position either on the tapping the $40 million out of the unclaimed property fund to pay for the Native American?
Not yet. I mean, that was a new one that hit us, after we met in caucus on Monday, and so I've spoken with Speaker Hickman about it, try to get his feel for it, and he's still working it through his leadership team and his caucus to try to figure out where they'll be. And so we don't have an official position yet. I mean, we're encouraged that we're getting closer to getting it done. But I mean, of course, our position is if they would have opened up a bond issue on the House floor, if Speaker Shannon would have called up a bond issue last year, I think the votes were there to pass it. The votes were certainly there to pass it in the Senate. It's just that the Republican leadership has kicked this ball down the road far too long, and hopefully we'll get it done.